Hi everyone, welcome to the Knitting Machine Course channel. I'm Ksenia and today I'm going to try 3 different methods of making lifted hems. These beautiful edges. And I will begin with the most popular method of making a lifted hem. I need to start my knitting with a waste yarn. So this is the color of my main yarn and I'm placing it in carriage. I also put counter here to 0, that I know exactly how many rows I'm making. And I'm making 1 row in the working stitch size, which is 6. So I'm making it only 1. Now I'm going to decrease the size of my stitches for 2 points till 4. So now I set it on 4. And with this size of stitch, I'm going to make the back side of the lifted hem, and it's gonna be made of 8 rows. So now I'm gonna make 8 rows. So I made it 8 rows, and now I will have to make 1 row which will be on the turning on the edge, and usually it has to be with a high stitch size. So I will set my dial on 7. So it will be 1 stitch size higher than my working stitch size. And I'm making 1 row. Next, I'm again decreasing the size of my stitch to 5. So it's a little bit higher, 1 point higher than the back side of the hem, lifted hem. And it's 1 stitch size lower than my working stitch size. And I'm going to make 10 rows. And now I'm going to remove weights and start placing loops here on the needles. So this will be my first loop. My second loop. And so on. The last one is not the easiest to find and place, because usually it's very, very tight. So now I will put my needles into position D. I will place my weights on the waste yarn here, like this. And for the connecting row, I will increase stitch size on 1 point, so it's gonna be 7. And I'm making 1 row. Now I can continue knitting with my working stitch size, so I'm decreasing it to 6, and I will make a few rows before closing the edge. So now when I close the edge, I can remove my beads and I can pull out the slippery cord, disattach waste yarn, and my little hem is ready. So this is the result after ironing, and you can see that it's a very flat edge, and here's on the other side it's very neat, very beautiful edge. Here also this place where the edge ends, you can see it almost as a line, so it's quite visible, but of course it's also not a problem. And this edge also not overstretched. The next method of lifted hem which I'm going to try is easier and faster than the first one, and I start with casting on with E-wrap on every second needle. So here, and put it on the third needle, the fifth, and so on. Now when I finished casting on, I will need 20 rows with a stitch size which is two sizes smaller than my working stitch size. So my working stitch size is 6, that is why now dial set is on 4, and I'm going to make 20 rows. Now when I made my 20 rows, I'm going to remove weights and put this very visible loops also on every second needle. I will bring all the needles to the front. And now I will set stitch size on my working setting. So it will be 6. And stitch 1 row. Now I can place weights and make a few extra rows and close the swatch. So here's the result after ironing. So you see that it's very flat, it's not overstretched. And this is the front side, and this is the other side. Of course, edge looks much less neat than of the classical one. So the other side, wrong side, I like more of of the classical way of lifted hem, but maybe you can also see this difference, that actually this line, which is visible, much more visible here with this classical lifted hem than with this method. So if you annoyed by this line, you can choose this method. And now I will try to make so-called picot hem. And I will begin with the waist yarn again. And now I'm going to make 9 rows with the stitch size 1 point lower than my working stitch size. So it's going to be 5. And here I also will set to 0 my counter. And I'm going to make 9 rows. And now I'm going to transfer loops on every second needle to the next one. So I'm transferring this loop on the next needle. Bum. And this one on the next one. Now when I finish transferring loops, I set the stitch size to the working one, so to 6, bring it up, and I'm going to make 10 more rows with this stitch size. Now again I'm removing weights, taking my transfer tool and transfer these loops on needles. Now when I transferred all the loops on needles, I'm going to place back on the waist yarn my weights and increase stitch size 2 points more, so I will place it at 8, and I'm gonna make a joining row. Now I will return my stitch size back to 6, my working stitch size, and I will make a few rows and close the edge. So this is the result after ironing. You can see that we have a very beautiful edge, and this is from the other side. It's very neat. You can also see here that on the other side this hem is much tighter. That's how we were knitting it, right? So we made here rows a bit tighter with lower stitch size, and the front part was made with the same stitch size of stitches. And I would say I have this visual effect that it's a bit overstretched. So maybe if I would decide to use it on one garment and make a big um, swatch, I would consider to also reduce the stitch of size of stitches on the front side. I think it will look much better.